Their harm alarm, what's that weird feeling that you get inside when you know something just isn't right? Well, you need to share that with a grown up right away. Don't keep it bottled in. So, important safety messages that kids need to be taught.
Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Shafer of Talks with Dr. Shafer. I'm a physician, mom, life coach, musician, author, publisher, and I'm passionate about helping others reclaim their stories so they can build their most beautiful futures. And that really starts ideally at the beginning of someone's life when they're learning about what life looks like. And today, I am so excited to have someone on the show who has dedicated their career to helping do just that. Today, I have Erica from Little Iguana's Children's Safety Foundation, a nonprofit organization that is dedicated to using catchy songs to teach children life-saving lessons, from the daily skills of hand washing and wearing a seatbelt to understanding the need to get permission from your caregiver before you do an activity, being wary of strangers, and of potentially abusive behavior. Your organization has been around for over 30 years doing this important work. Can you tell us how it all started and how you've grown over the years to better help keep kids safe and informed, Erica?
Absolutely. So, the Little Iguanas Children's Safety Foundation, like you said, has been around for 30 years. So, it was founded in 1994 with the mission to educate and empower kids to be safe, happy, healthy, kind, well rounded individuals that grow up to be productive leaders in our society. And we achieve this through music based programs and resources that are geared for children ages 2 through 10. And that has changed a little bit over the course of 30 years, as you can imagine. At this time, we have over 20 safety and well-being lessons that we teach through those music-based programs that go into elementary schools and preschools. We have programs available online. We have educational resources and products and worksheets and curriculum. But as you can imagine, 30 years ago, things like online safety, where it wasn't something that needed to be talked about, or even maybe like kindness. Those topics were more either not existent or not needed to be instilled as much in children. So the foundation has definitely evolved over the last 30 years, but its core mission has always remained the same: to prevent harm before it happens. And by that, we're addressing, critical issues that children need to know in order to stay safe. And how the foundation actually started is my dad is the founder of the foundation. So it is definitely a family mission. I am 35 years old, even though I look extremely young to some people. So 30 years ago, my dad founded this foundation with the goal to keep his kids safe. So it was me, my brother, and my sister. And my dad had, some unexpected and unpleasant things happen to him in his childhood. And he wanted to make sure that those things didn't happen to his children. So he created this program with the basis of keeping kids safe, their harm alarm, what's that weird feeling that you get inside when you know something just isn't right? Well, you need to share that with a grown up right away. Don't keep it bottled in, don't keep it safe away so that 30 years from now you're in therapy talking about something that happened. You need to address that situation and talk about it right away. So, who is a stranger? Buckling up your seatbelt, things like that. So, important safety messages that kids need to be taught. Unfortunately, that's not something that they're born with, which I know some parents think either a parent, not them as a parent, or a teacher should be in charge of teaching those kind of things. So we make sure that children are able to have the courage and language to express themselves in situations that sometimes, aren't the best.
I love that you brought up the harm alarm, because that is one of my favorite things that I've learned about from your program, because I think that that is something that is systematically dampened. In other words, we systematically teach young people not to listen to their harm alarm in a lot of ways, right? Oh, it's okay. When they fall and they're in pain, we say, oh, it's okay. It wasn't that bad, when they're feeling pain. And that can set this cascade of learned behavior of, okay, when I feel pain, I can't talk about it. And that may seem so simple, but it's teaching kids, not to express themselves. And that's in something about physical pain. And I think there's a lot more shame behind emotional pain that is inevitably inflicted upon us in our childhood as we're learning and our parents are learning and all of their caregivers are learning how to be the best humans. We all experience emotional harm to some degree. The question is, do we feel safe to sit in those feelings, recognize them, and have a safe adult that we can discuss those feelings with, and can say, hey, that made me feel this way when you said that or did that, and have that caregiver also have the emotional intelligence and regulation and have gone through that self-parenting. Like you said, they're in their 30s and they're going through the therapy to know that, okay, I'm going to try to set aside my feelings of shame that will often come up if my child comes to me and I recognize that I've harmed them, and just sit with them and acknowledge, yes, you're feeling this emotion. It's okay that you feel that. I can understand why you'd feel that way. Let's move past it together. I'm going to try to do better. And maybe if it was something that there was no ill intent, it's something we have to do for school, talk about that. But it's so important that children understand that their feelings are valid and to really trust that harm alarm, like you talk about. Can you share with me some of the tools that parents and teachers can use that are in your lesson plans? And I know, by the way, that your lesson plans vary from 2 to 10, I believe. So,
Mhm.
what are some tools that are really targeted to certain age groups that help really reinforce the importance of listening to your harm alarm that teachers and parents can share with their children?
Absolutely. So I do want to just jump back to that harm alarm for 1 second, because you hear that. And if you don't know what Liliguana, like how Liliguana defines that, so we say that your harm alarm is that weird feeling you get inside when you know something just isn't right, like I had said, but it could be, you get goosebumps on your arms, or you have a weird feeling in your belly, or your heart is beating really fast. So we use examples for kids, especially younger children, because what is that feeling going to feel like? Like, are you sad? Are you mad? Are you angry? Are you scared? So those are the emotions. And we have feelings calendars and mood trackers so that parents can get in that routine of talking to their children about what emotions are, what specific feelings feel like. So in our feelings calendar, and that is geared for younger children, we have different pictures of different emotions. So you can see how that emotion may manifest in yourself or in others. And then it has the name of what it is and a brief description of what, you might be feeling. And what we use for our feelings calendar is every day you're able to address or identify what your overall feeling was for the day. And this is a great way for parents and educators to start those conversations about emotions and emotional regulation and intelligence. It's so important for us to know not sad, mad, and happy. There's other emotions and there's other feelings that children and adults may have. So it's important for parents to see every day, maybe they can start the conversation about, how they're feeling, why they were feeling that way. What were some of the things that happened in the day that made you feel happy or scared or worried or anxious? And it's really important to have those conversations when things are easy, especially so that children have that line of communication open and they know that they can go to you when there's some maybe difficult situations or difficult feelings and emotions that they have. And the feelings calendar is a great tool because parents or educators can look at it and see patterns in feelings and behaviors. So every Tuesday, your child marks that they're anxious or they're worried or they're scared. So it's good for you as a parent to say, what do we do on Tuesdays that might
Mm.
make them feel scared or worried or sad or maybe happy? Why are they happy every Tuesday? And it
Mm.
opens up that line of communication to start talking about, the great things that may be happening in their lives, but maybe some of the things that they need a little bit of help with. And that is a great conversation starter. But the harm alarm, we have music that talks about the harm alarm. We have animated music videos that kids can watch to reinforce the messages of, it's that weird feeling you get. You always have to share it with an adult right away. We're not going to leave those feelings and, think about them. We're going to share them so that we can get help and that we can get, feel happy again, or we can address what's happening to us. And we have worksheets and workbooks for older kids to talk about how they're feeling. We have, our calm down corner. We have our emotional intelligence packet and bundle that have worksheets. When I'm feeling happy, what does it look like? When I'm feeling sad, what does it look like? But also our, thermometer. Where am I on this thermometer? Similar to other, products that are out there, but I think it's really important for kids to be able to express their emotions and to identify, how they're feeling. Because like I said, there's not just three emotions, there's a wide range that kids can have the opportunity to learn and be able to express.
And I love that. And I love how you mention at the top that not only is there a wide range of emotions, there's a wide range in ways that that emotion can manifest within your body, and learning how to check in with your body, because your body responds often quicker than your thought
Mm-hmm.
processing, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I've got goosebumps. What does that mean for me? I'm learning my body's responses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's your nervous system. So myself as a neurologist who's very interested in mindset work, personal development, and safety, it is all about understanding the triggers, how you respond to the triggers, and really leaning into listening to, I often call it your gut, but because our gut is our, enteric nervous system,
Mm-hmm.
and
That
there are
your
connections
voice,
there.
trust your gut. We
Yes,
say so many
exactly.
different things to kids so that something will be able to catch and something will be able to like resonate with them.
Exactly. That feeling, the connection of that feeling, of what your body is telling you, because there's truly ancient wisdom in the mammalian part of your brain that doesn't have words to it, that your body is trying to communicate you to keep you safe.
Mm-hmm.
And so I love you focusing on that. And I also think it's really interesting thinking about the visualization of when you discussed the charting of emotions, especially one, it's great to do these things when everything's fine,
Mm-hmm.
because we can learn so much better when everything is relatively calm. Our nervous system's in a great place to learn. And I really love this idea of, maybe if something's just not right, your gut as a parent or as a teacher is, something's not right with my class setting or with my child at home. We're going to go through this activity and we're going to chart it, we're going to monitor it and see if there are certain days or certain activities that's causing a certain feeling, either in a group or in an individual, and listen to that, because often kids, again, have received the direct or indirect message not to trust their gut. And so even if they feel badly about something, feel off about something, like soccer, for example, something's happening with soccer, or they
Mm-hmm.
just simply don't enjoy soccer. And maybe dad was a soccer player and dad's so proud that they're in soccer. And so every time dad says, "Hey, you ready to go to soccer? You excited?" They're like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
yay, I'm so
Mm-hmm.
excited." And that's every Thursday. But if you look at the chart, every Thursday, anxious, worried, scared, because maybe they don't like the sport, or there's something going on with the team, whatever it may be. And so I love that it kind of gives you this opportunity to really early on in a person's life experience help them to understand that it's so important that they communicate their true feelings and not hide behind stating just what they think people expect from them, because I think those are the beginning stages of some behaviors that can really get us in tricky positions later in life. And it can really start in childhood. Now, I know from listening to some of your videos about safety issues early on, and as you said, from your father, were really an inspiration for starting the program and wanting to try to make a difference in what is really an epidemic of child safety issues, from accidents, from non-accidental trauma as well, from abuse. I heard one story, and you may have many, many more, about a child who had been at an assembly at, I think it was the age of 8.
Mm-hmm.
And little Iguana had done a program, and it was teaching her about personal safety. And again, harm alarm. If
Mm-hmm.
you feel your harm alarm go off, whatever that means for you, you listen to it. You don't doubt it. And then later, can you I know you know this story too. Do you want to share what happened later?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, our program, our Lil Iguana Live and our in classroom program has reached literally millions of children over the last 30 years. We've been in 7 countries. We travel throughout the United States. So, this program was actually close to home for us. Our foundation is based in Southern New Hampshire. We did a program at an elementary school in Massachusetts. And during our Lil Iguana Live elementary school programs, we have volunteers from the audience come up on stage, and they get to be mentors for their fellow students and talk about the different safety lessons that we have, and they get to participate in the show, in the program. And we had a volunteer come up on stage. She was 8 years old. She was in second grade. And we were talking about our run, 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 yell and tell program. So that is what you're going to do if you do not have permission to go with someone and they try to get you to go with them and you don't have permission to go. So if you don't have permission from the adult in charge of you, we consider that person a stranger. So we make it super easy for kids. Who is a stranger? Are they bad? Are they good? Are they the next door neighbor? Are they, your teacher, maybe when you see them in the grocery store or something like that? So if you don't have permission to go with that person, we consider them a stranger. So run, 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 yell and tell is what you're going to do if a stranger tries to get you to go with them and you don't have permission. So we talk to our kids about it, and we, act out run, 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 yell and tell, and we do our song on stage. And 8 years later, that child was in a situation where she was uh, um, tried to be abducted by a level 3 offender. And she says to the police when they come to the scene, that silly, stupid song, Run, 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 Yell and Tell, that I heard 8 years prior, one time for a Lil Iguana program, rang through her head, and she said, I need to run, 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 yell and tell. I need to get away from this situation. My harm alarm is going off. I don't have permission. Something is not right. I need to tell someone right away. And that is the most important reason why we teach through music. All of our programs are music based because that is the most effective way to teach. You are in high school and you have great lessons from your teachers. And I don't remember most of those now, but if a song came on from when I was in high school, I can sing all those words to all those songs so easily. And that is one of the most important reasons why we teach through music, because you're going to remember those lessons, you're going to remember those teachings. And that is what happened to her. And we talk about how the program is so effective because it stays with children into their, young adult life, but it also is so effective for children at a young age because it is a non-threatening program. We have our cuddly character, Lil Iguana, who's teaching you these life-saving lessons in a very non-threatening way. You don't realize you're learning. We're having, music, we're singing songs, we're listening to stories, we're doing fun demonstrations. So kids don't even really realize that they're learning, never mind learning something that could potentially save their life. So we had a program that was in a preschool, and a child was 3 years old, and he was going to preschool every single day, and his parents were dropping him off, and everything was great. And we came in, Lil Iguana came in, we did our program, and he said, you know what, Mom, I really need to talk to Lil Iguana. And, before Lil Iguana came in, he had been having nightmares, regression, soiling his pants. His parents took him to the doctors. His parents said, oh, it's okay. It's growing pains. He'll grow out of it. Everything's fine. That child didn't have the language to verbalize what was happening to him. Maybe not the courage to speak out because he was threatened by the child care provider. So that is what we talk about in our program. It doesn't matter if someone says don't tell, you always tell because we never keep secrets, we only keep surprises. So, a very long winded answer to your question, but the harm alarm lesson and this run, 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 yell and tell lesson, stranger danger, personal safety, all of these lessons can be taught at a young age in some level, in some increment, and then they can be carried into adulthood because we as adults also need to listen to our harm alarm. We need to know, oh, you know what? Something just doesn't feel right. I need to either get out of this situation or I need to do something about it and I need to tell someone.
Yeah, I mean, these programs, your program will change the world and will change lives in such an impactful way that, no math class could have that degree of impact, or English literature class. Even those are incredible, wonderful skills to teach our children. But at the end of the day, teaching them to trust their gut and to make safe choices is the most important lesson that we need to be teaching our children. But we try to tell them, and we know studies show that you can tell a kid 30 times not to go up to a stranger with a lollipop. Don't get in the car to see the puppy. Don't go in the car because they say, Mom's hurt. I'm a friend of Mom's. I need you to come now. We're going to the hospital. You can tell your children many, many, many times never to do that. Unfortunately, most children will still do it
And that's
because, yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to
No,
say, and
no, go
that's where the
ahead.
repetition and the communication comes in because we are a learned species. So it's not a one time, oh, I actually downloaded all that information into my brain and I know it forever now. We need to have these conversations over and over again with our children and use the Little Iguana program to make it non-threatening. Listen to the music
Mm,
in the car ride on the way home. Listen to our we have a story time podcast for kids. Listen to that at bedtime or in the car on the way to school, so that these themes and these messages are second nature to them, so that when it comes time, hopefully never, for something to happen to them, they're not going to freeze. They're going to say, oh, I need to run, 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 yell and tell. I need to use my words correctly. Help. I don't know this person. This person's trying to take me. I need help, so that people around them listen and know, oh, I need to actually listen to this, what's happening. It's not just some kid in the store that's screaming, we always just like, oh, okay. It's, I need help, please come help me, something
yeah.
like that.
Exactly. Exactly. It's so important. And from a neurological perspective, so when you're learning music, you're automatically tapping into an emotional part of your brain, because of the way that you process the music and the emotional experience we have with music. So even though they're in a calm state, they're getting the music, and then when they're in this heightened state and they're brought into that part of their brain that's involved in fight or flight, it's a fascinating thing because I think there's some brilliance there with the music too. Not only is it catchy, but you're activating the same part of your brain. And when that emotion is there, accessing the music is much easier than accessing the frontal lobe part of your brain that's very reasoned and it learned all of these lessons in school. That part of your brain is offline in a crisis. Now you're just dealing with, again, the more mammalian fight or flight part of your brain. So I think there's just so much absolute brilliance in teaching these lessons in music. And I imagine too that it's also a benefit to parents when they're learning these songs and singing them with their kids to maybe relearn some lessons that they learned maybe in the 80s or 90s about, what it means to be a good citizen or a good kid, because I think often when people start their parenting journey and they start saying things that were said to them when they were children to their kids, and they have the same expectations their parents maybe had of them. And I think it's a pretty common experience to think, oh, wow. Okay. I'm being triggered by this behavior because I never would have been able to speak back. I would have not have been able to express my concern. And while maybe that leads to a very compliant child, and maybe that makes things easier in the moment, although I think that's arguably not necessarily accurate, but long term, that's setting up that child through compliance to be at risk, because not every adult that we come in contact with is a safe adult. They don't all have good intent for us. What are some other lessons for me with my kids? I do have some things that we always talk about. So we always say adults don't ask kids for help, right? They don't do
We
that.
we say that in all of our programs, unless it's to help around the classroom or to help around the
Mm,
house, adults are never going to ask kids for help. So that is something that we say in all of our programs, and that is something that should be ringing your harm alarm through. And you should say, you know what? An adult would never say, especially an adult maybe that I don't know, would never say, oh, can you help me look for my puppy? We all love puppies. We don't want anything to happen to that puppy. But you know what you have to do? You have to get permission from the adult in charge of you before you go and help that adult look for a puppy. Because again, not all situations are malicious or bad. So we make it super easy. If you don't have permission, you don't go. And it just makes it like yes or no. It's not like, is this a safe person? I don't really know. I know this person. Sometimes I go over their house. It's just, do I have
mm,
permission? Yes, no. And we teach permission as 3 simple steps. You have to look the adult that's in charge of you right in the eyeballs. And we say eyeballs because it's funny and kids are going to remember that. You need to ask if you can go somewhere or if you can do something. And then you have to get a yes. So permission is eyeballs, ask, yes. If you don't have a yes, you can't go. You don't have permission.
And that's also that bubbles over into consent as well, just teaching that at a really young age, which is incredibly important. Consent from others and also how you give consent,
Mm-hmm.
right? And having that expectation, and not allowing others to feel entitled to your consent, that you have to give it willingly. And if you don't, it hasn't been given. It can't be something that is assumed. Wow, that's amazing. Um, there was something I wanted to hop on something you said, because I think it's something you said earlier, but it escaped me because I was thinking about the consent. But
Yeah, but I mean, it just goes back to making it super easy for kids. So, do you have permission? Yes, no. Is the next door neighbor a stranger? I don't know. Sometimes I go over her house. I say hi to Mrs. Jones every day when I come home from school with my mom. Sometimes I go in her house. I'm playing outside and Mrs. Jones says, hey, do you want to come over and watch a movie? I just have to get permission first. And then that person isn't considered a stranger at that time and I can go. You just have to let the adult, the grown up in charge of you, know where you're going and who you're going with. You have to get permission first.
yeah, and that's so important. It's the decision making, and that's what I wanted to really hone in on. Is kids aren't their frontal lobes are not fully online yet. That's going to be their late 20s, maybe even early 30s for some of us, right? Our decision making skills are not fantastic. Our critical thinking is not fantastic. So saying nope, this is the algorithm we follow, right? Kids can remember these 3 things, especially when you put humor in it like you did with the eyeballs. And that is so genius, because a lot of kids, if you ask them these scenarios, will start asking questions. Well, I don't know, do I know the person? And they do get kind of lost in this decision making, and they're really not, they don't have the skills to do that. And I think that's really important as a parent to recognize, because a lot of us, I hear parents say all the time, oh, they're really smart. Oh, and they kind of make these assumptions about their kids' critical thinking, and they are really smart. And yes, they know, but in that moment, unless they're armed with something like this, with a song or a skill set that really tells them this, you're not burdened with this choice, right?
Yeah.
It's the adult's choice that is so helpful for safety.
A child doesn't need a decision map made for them. It's just a yes or a no. Do you have permission? Yes or no. And the eyeballs part is so important because parents, I'm not saying we do it, but sometimes maybe we're on our phones or we're distracted.
Mm,
So a child saying, hey, I'm going to go outside and play, maybe we didn't hear that, but we also didn't give permission. But I'm just saying. So the eyeballs part is so important because we're both looking at each other. We both know that we're focused on this moment and what is going to be said. And then that's when the child's going to ask, can I go somewhere? Can I do something? And talk about who they're going with. And then that's when you're making the plan and saying, yes, that's when you have permission.
And the majority of our communication is nonverbal.
Mm-hmm.
So if we actually, I love the eyeballs part too, because if we, look up from our phone or our work, our laptop, and we look our kid in the eye, we may actually be able to read from their body language, from something they're showing us, that maybe their harm alarm's going off and maybe they haven't figured that out yet. And maybe they don't feel safe about something, and we can give them an out. And I think that becomes even more important as our kids get older, when they're in that preteen, there's sleepovers and activities, kind of making sure that you have already set in place this opportunity for really clear communication, safe communication, so that they know that they can listen to their harm alarm, that they can ask for permission, that you will look at them and you will hear them and you will give them an opportunity as an out, because often kids need an opportunity for an out.
Absolutely. And it makes it easy. I know we keep kind of talking about this, but is this person bad? Is this person good? Do I know this person? Have I done something with this person before? It just makes it so much easier also for the adult in charge, the parent or the caregiver. Where are they going? Who are they going with? It might be, after the soccer game, the coach says, hey, let's all get ice cream. But if you don't have permission, how does your mom or dad or your caregiver know that you left in a car to go get ice cream? So it's
Yeah.
just, it's basic safety for everyone. It's not always malicious or bad situations that we have to get permission for. It's just general safety to make sure you know where your child is, who they're with, and when they're going to be back.
Yeah, I had almost had a heart attack recently because one of my 4 children had left her school. And this is a non-US school, so there might be different policies, but she had left her school without permission of an adult, without eyeballs, right? And I think the adults present thought, oh, they must be leaving. That's just the time of day. But parent was there, but wasn't in the exact place child was. And we nearly had a heart attack because we didn't know where that child was. And, thank goodness they did have a smart device, but that comes with its own issues when we think about children's safety when they have these smart devices. So a lot
Mm-hmm.
of kids maybe won't have smart devices. So it's so important. It's the worst feeling in the world
Mm-hmm.
when you don't know where your child is. Now, this is a good segue to talking about some of the updated lessons that you did mention earlier about, okay, so now we don't just have stranger danger. I don't know, when you were a kid, and you're younger than me, but did they teach you about, don't pick up stickers on the playground because they could be laced with
I
illicit
never got
drugs?
that, but I
Oh
don't know if that was a
yeah.
regional thing. I never
Oh,
got that.
that was a thing. There's a lot of focus on that, and then not a lot of focus on what we talked about earlier, which is, the stranger danger. And strangers aren't just
In
these
person.
people, right? And yeah, it's not just a random person who drives by with his car
Mm-hmm.
and says he has a puppy. A stranger is a lot more people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important. But we used to focus in the 90s and 80s on those things, on, like the drug lace stickers and the stranger danger and the white van, but not necessarily the other personal safety issues. And now we've got more to think about when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to online safety. Can you share some of the programs or things that you have to support parents who do have children who are exposed to the online world so that they can have more safety and just be better prepared for that?
Absolutely. So think of the internet as a big city. You wouldn't let your child just wander around the big city without you. So, internet safety or online safety is so important to talk to your kids about from so many different perspectives. So, the first is just being kind online. We talk about being behind a screen, you can't see the other person, or you don't know who they are, or you're hidden behind the screen. It doesn't matter. You still need to act with kindness. You need to say and type words that you think the other person is going to receive well. How do you want to be treated? Kindness is really important. We do a lot of anti-bullying, especially when it comes to being like online, kindness online. But the other piece of that is you're never going to give out personal information. You're never going to share where you go to school, where you live, Personal details. You're not going to talk to people that you don't know. You're not going to agree to meet someone. You're going to make sure that you're getting permission before you're even going onto the device or online to talk to anyone. Do I have permission to go into this group setting or this forum and talk about things? There's so many programs now in schools where you're going online and you're doing coursework online, even elementary age children. And we actually just had this come up with a volunteer that is part of our organization. Her grandson was going online to do schoolwork, and he was actually talking to someone that he did not know. So how exactly that person had access to that portal, I'm not really sure, but those are the realities of things that are happening. And he knows, because of the Little Iguana program, that that is not okay. And he had his harm alarm go off, and he did share that feeling. But there's so many kids that might not know what that harm alarm feels like. So that's why we need to introduce those topics. Like, we're not sharing personal information, but before we even get onto the computer, onto our device, or onto our tablet, we're saying, do I have permission? And we're talking about the kinds of things that we can do online, and we're making a plan of what we're going to be able to do. And then we're going to follow that plan. And if we see anything or if we read anything that makes our harm alarm go off, that's when we're immediately leaving the device and we're telling the grown-up that's in charge.
Yeah, it's so important, and to treat them also as a stranger, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
just in person, because a lot of people impersonate younger people. They play these games. Maybe it's a math related game, or they play Roblox, a very popular one, and they befriend children. They are not children, but they pretend,
Mm-hmm.
right? They impersonate a child
Yes.
and get that personal information. So that's so important, because when you talk to kids, it kind of reminds me again about the studies they did on, how many times you have to tell a child not, not sing them a song, not teach them the skills, but just tell them, don't go with strangers, don't get in the white van. And they still get in the white van
Mm-hmm.
because they're making a decision for whatever reason, right? They haven't been told explicitly, you don't make the decision. Mom, dad, grandma, the caregiver, they make the decision. You need to go ask them first, because that gives you that gift of time. Anytime someone's pressuring you for an answer right now, there's an emergency right now, you need to go, whether you're an adult or a child, that's a red flag. That your harm alarm should be going off. Because unless a comet's falling from the sky, right, or you're standing in an intersection and a car is coming your way, usually you don't have to do anything right now. And so I think that's really key, is trying to help children create space and time between when there's a safety issue, and allowing that, encouraging that contact with their caregiver to allow space and time, and not just get sucked into that. I need to make a decision. This is an adult. They have power and authority over me. I can't leave them hanging. I have to answer them, right? I've been told that it's respectful to answer. So I think it's so important that instead of teaching children, we do need to teach them respect and love and kindness. But that also has to be contingent on being kind and protective of ourselves first.
Absolutely. And that is
Yeah.
a great point that you brought up. We teach it's never rude to check with the adult in charge first. We don't need to be worried about how the social interaction is going to be. We need to keep ourselves safe, and we need to listen and remember those themes and those lessons and those rules that we set with our caregiver. And this new adult that's coming in, they need to also follow and respect those rules. So we need to go check with our grown up first.
Exactly. Because if that adult wants you to be a safe person,
They're going to be fine with it.
they're fine with it. You're not going to hurt their feelings. But if they don't want that for you, if they have a different intent, they might be hurt. And that's okay. Again, we're not teaching kids anymore, I hope, to manage other people's feelings. We put our best foot forward. We're kind and respectful, but that has to be internal as well. First, we have to keep ourselves safe. We have to learn to follow the rules of safety in our family situation, so that we're keeping ourselves safe, and not feel we need to be empowered to choose our safety, not caged in by some of these social norms that tell us, that we need to keep adults happy or we need to perform for them. I think there was a lot of that going on when I grew up. Yeah. So over time, as you have evolved as a company, and obviously media has changed quite a bit. In-person events have changed. Now there's podcasts instead of broadcast television as much, right? We do a lot of things on podcasts that we used to do on television. How has your messaging changed, and what are new ways that you're trying to get the message across so that families and educators can access this really, really important information?
Absolutely. So you mentioned podcasting. Iguana has a storytime podcast that kids can listen to wherever you get your podcast stories. So it used to be mostly visual media, and now we do have audio media as well, with our stories and our messages and lessons and different themes that we have. So kids, again, aren't really realizing that they're learning. But in the beginning of our programs, in the beginning of our foundation, the majority of our programs were done in person. So we went into a preschool, or we went into an elementary school, or into a classroom, or at a community event. We had a booth at an expo, and we were teaching these lessons to either parents on how to teach to their kids or giving them resources, or we were teaching directly to children. And now we have this thing called the internet, and everything has completely changed. So we have our videos on YouTube that parents can access and educators can access for their classrooms or for their home. All of our music is available for streaming. It used to be that you would buy a CD or even a cassette. We had music. 1994, our music was two-sided cassettes that we would
Nice.
that we
I
would
love
mail
it.
that we would mail out. So things have completely, the technology has, I think, evolved our program in a way that it's made it accessible to so many more people, so many more families, communities. We have community leaders that use this for like after school programs, or in their community, they'll print our worksheets and distribute them at community events. So there's so many different products and resources that are now available online that if wherever you have internet, you're able to download these resources or stream them and start teaching them to your children, because it might seem like an uphill battle, like, this mountain that you have to climb. Like, how am I going to be able to teach all of these lessons to my children? We had mentioned we have 20 safety and well-being lessons. So hand washing, we didn't even talk about that, friendship and kindness, crossing the street, wearing your bike helmet, all of these things, like every second of every day, you'd be having to like worry about your child. So we're going to be introducing them slowly with music and storytelling and podcasts and worksheets and coloring sheets and different activities that you can print, or activity boxes that we have, or Empowered Kids affirmation card set. You're going to be able to not only have a physical card or download cards to print at your house, but we also have a video series that goes along with those cards that are SEL specialists, guides children through what is the meaning of this phrase. I have everything that I need inside me. I'm brave, things that are really positive for kids. What does that mean? What does that mean to them? So she does a great job of explaining that. But just the technology that has completely changed, that has made the program evolve in ways that it's making it accessible to people. We do still do in-person programming, but in 2020, we didn't have in-person programming. So what would have happened if we didn't utilize technology to evolve the program, So we do in-person programming, but we also have a lot of virtual programming for parents and community leaders and directly for children.
That's incredible. And I am just so thrilled to have had you on the show, and so excited to be just a small part of spreading the message. If you are someone who hadn't heard of Iguana, I'm so glad that you are here for this show. And please, Erica, share with our listeners how they can contact you if they want to try to arrange an in-person event, or they want to incorporate your curriculum into their own program. How can they do that?
So follow us on social media, Iguana Safety. You're going to get tips and tricks. We do a tip of the week every Tuesday. We have a video that talks about how you can introduce one of these safety lessons in a small way every week into your routine. We also have our educational programming that goes into elementary schools and preschools and at community events. So you can go on our website, liliguana.org, Lil iguana.org, and you can request a program to come to your school. We have virtual programs if you're not, in an area that we currently serve geographically. We have our online membership called Safety Up, where parents or caregivers can get a monthly action plan sent straight to their inbox each month, so they don't even have to think about, what am I going to do this month or this week or this day to help empower my children. Everything is sent right to you. We have discussion prompts and reinforcing worksheets and activities and kid-friendly language on how you're going to be teaching this lesson. And I know we talk a lot about teaching and educating, but for kids, it's like, but why? So we also address the why, which we hadn't really talked about at all, but I think it's so important. Like, why do we wear our helmet? Well, because our head is fragile like an egg. And if we drop an egg without something protecting it, what happens? We might get some scrambled eggs. So that's like a really important way. It's a really important thing that we teach why, so that kids can actually understand why they need to be safe. And I know we're wrapping up, but just super quick, like we talk about the most dramatic ending, abuse or accidental injuries. But there's so many things in between, like just falling off your bike, why we need to wear a helmet, or buckling up your seatbelt. We're hoping that we're not getting in some kind of accident, but we need to buckle up every time, whether we're going near or far, just to be safe. So it's important that we understand the dramatic end of why we're teaching this, but we need to teach it in a way that, this is just part of our routine and this is everyday life. And, we're not thinking about this thing, but we are prepared if something like that happens.
Yeah. And as a parent who, again, I have 4 kids and they all have their own, reaction to demands, to requests that we make of them. And some of them have really big reactions to demands and it's very triggering for them. And basically they want to do the opposite. And some are just, they're going to do anything mom says. And for the children who struggle with doing things that are asked of them, there's some, demand avoidance characteristics, which happens a lot for children, especially in that really young toddler age group. To be able to tap into a song, it moves it away from a demand and it moves it into a fun routine and a connecting experience. So I think that is such a wonderful tool. And I can just see it now, if you've got a kiddo that you're struggling with their seatbelt, one, to make them understand really why without showing them anything graphic, anything that you don't want to be seared into their mind's eye, right? But giving them an understanding of the dangers, but also making it fun. For me, when my children would get dressed as little kids, they didn't like the tactile sensation of clothes going on and off. It really bothered them, both of the younger ones. And so for me, I would always go, put our hands up, we're playing our song, the butterflies fly away. And we would just sing that every single time. So it was no longer even about taking the shirt off or putting the shirt on. It was, oh, I put my arms up when I hear this song. It tapped into a different part of their brain that just made it a routine and something fun. And they were focused on singing the song with me. So again, there's just all these really cool tricks that we can use to get out of the power struggle of parenting, especially really young kids that may struggle with demands. They may struggle with falling into routines, and helps move it away from a power struggle and into a fun way to connect. This routine we have together. Kids may act like they don't love routine, but they thrive on knowing what to expect and feeling in control and feeling like they do understand consequences. They understand the why. That's why I ask a million questions when they get to a certain age. So I just commend you and Lil Iguana for the amazing work you do to empower children. I believe that this is the most important thing that we do as educators and as parents for our children, to empower them in this way. Thank you so much for the incredible work that you and your family is doing.
Thank you so much for giving us a platform to share it.
Thank you so much, Erica. And thank you so much to our storytellers. I hope you learned as much as I did today. Even though I'm super intentional with my kids and we sing a lot of songs and do a lot of fun activities, now I'm really excited to start listening to the podcast and making that just another way to get these stories and these skills incorporated into our lives so that we can be safer, happier, and healthier as a family. So thank you so much for being here. Make sure you subscribe to the show so you don't miss the next amazing and inspiring guest episode on Talks with Dr. Shafer. Until then, stay safe and take care. I'll talk to you soon.